All right, Lee. So, what exactly are we going to be doing in this video?
Well, we're going to start implementing this stuff in Train Demo that we put the groundwork for in TerrainPatch in the last video.
Okay.
So what we're going to do is set up the code that we need to sequence how and when and at the rate that we bring in new train patches.
Okay.
So we're going to need a couple of new variables here. So if I go to Train Demo and we go up to the top, we're going to need another constant. Now, I'm going to make this a private constant. And let's make this one a float. And what this one is going to be is the patch update delay. Now this is going to control how much delay we want in between each patch being drawn as we run through the game. So like we were talking about in one of the previous videos, as you run through the world right now, as you get to that edge where it's getting ready to draw a new row, it tries to draw all those new terrain patches in a single frame, which causes some glitching in the animation
Mm-hmm.
or in the whole game itself.
Exactly.
So what we're going to do is we're going to space out those patches. So that's what this is setting. This is going to be our overall delay for that. So we've got a delay, but that also means that we're going to need a timer. So I'm going to make a private float, and this will be our patch update timer. And we'll set this one to 0 for now. We're also going to need to keep track of when this is the very first time that we're loading in the world, as opposed to after. Okay, let me say that again. We need to keep track of when this is the very first time we're putting patches down inside of the world. We know that we have a grid of patches. Tile side count here is set to 4, which means we have a grid of 5 by 5 patches or
Hang on.
25 patches.
Yeah, go ahead and get your mouse back over in here.
Oh,
It's
wrong one. Okay,
there we go.
so right here, we've got tile side count of 5. That means,
Five.
or sorry, 4. Yeah.
Okay.
So tile side count of 4. And that means we've got 4 patches to one side, 4 patches to the other side, plus the patch in the middle. So that gives us a total of 9. I can do math. So 9 times 9 is some
81.
number. Is it 81? Wow, look at that. Okay, so 81 patches total. So we know we've got 81 patches. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that when we're loading in these patches for the very first time, those first 81 patches come in without this delay. Otherwise, we needlessly cause our game to take almost a minute and a half to load the
Right.
very first time, in addition to all the calculation time. So we don't want that to happen. So we're going to take this number, or we're going to take another variable, and make sure that we can indicate when this is the first time the level's being loaded. So that variable I'm going to call a private bool initial load. Getting a little tongue-tied right now. Have you noticed?
Just a little, but I mean, your time, it's what, going on 5 a.m. now?
Yeah, about 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we've only been at this since the radio show, and then all through the radio show, and then we started talking about your birthday present, and
Yeah, and now this is how I spend my birthday. Woo! It's awesome.
yeah. So, all right, so we've got our 3 fields that we're going to need to be able to do this. Now, where we want to be able to track this is going to be in handle train update, because this is where we're handling all of the stuff that deals with our train. Right now, this first half of it is dealing with figuring out when we need to draw in new patches, and the bottom half of this is dealing with when we need to remove patches. And as somebody pointed out that we're checking the remove patches on every single frame, that's probably not very optimal. And I kind of told them, it's like, don't worry about it, we'll get there. These next videos are where we're getting there. We're
Okay.
going to get that all taken care of. But before we, in between checking our last patches and removing old patches, there's something else that I want to be able to do now. Now, that is loading in patches that, or making sure that patches that have been calculated, but their update meshes haven't been called, that all gets dealt with right here. So what we need to do is do a condition. We want to check and make sure that our patch timer, well, that was really good. TeleSense, none better.
Back up one more.
I'm getting there. Lag's killing me. So not the system. This is all brain lag today. So we want to check our patch update timer is less than or equal to 0. And wow, come on, 0. And then when that is true, we're going to do some stuff. But we also have to make sure that our patch update timer is updating. So to do that, we're going to go if patch update timer is greater than 0, the patch update timer is going to be minus equal time.delta time. So this is going to decrement our patch update timer. Right now we're starting off at 0 because the initial state of the game, we want our timer to be 0. We don't want this thing to have to count down when we first start. So we're going to leave it at 0. And then every subsequent time after we set patch update timer, it's going to go ahead and decrement each frame. Once the patch update timer is less than or equal to 0, then we're going to start looking at handling updating our patches. Now, one of the things that we have to do before even updating patches is we need to reset that hold meshes updates flag that we set. This is to make sure that every frame we're going to reset this because we want at most ever to be able to update a single patch in a single frame. Each frame we want to reset that and go, okay, this is a new frame. The first patch that gets updated gets it and flags it, and then we'll turn hold mesh update to true. And then the next frame that gets reset, and then the next patch get drawn. This will ensure that we will always be able to only update at least one mesh. This part of the equation makes sure that even though we're limited to at most one update per frame, if the patch timer hasn't been decremented down to 0, we're not going to even get to the point where we're looking at drawing new patches yet. So we first have to pass the test that we're now free of our timer and we haven't already updated a single mesh in this frame. So those are our conditional checks that we need to check. Now is taking our TerrainPatch. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. How about we loop through our TerrainPatch first? So we're going to do for each. And what does Nelson have against auto-completion of for eaches and for loops?
I know he's got auto completion. He uses it all the time.
I know, it's probably bound to some sort of key command. So we're going to look for and we're going to set a var TerrainPatch in our TerrainPatch, and we've got a list of patches called patches. So we're going to loop through every patch in our patches. And for each one of those, we're going to check, or we're going to run that TerrainPatch update. So train, and there it is. So we're going to run its update. If that update comes back as true, meaning it did do an update, we're going to have to do some more stuff. If not, we're going to go ahead and go look for the next patch. If it happens to find a patch and it does do an update, helps if I complete the method call. So if it calls the update and it updates something, then we have to go ahead and reset that patch update timer. To do that, we're going to go if patch update timer, or sorry, patch load count. I haven't added that one too. Well, okay, I got to add something else. If you remember, we said we got to keep track of the patches that are being loaded because we want to make sure whether or not our patches are part of the initial load or if those patches are from inside of gameplay. That field is something I forgot to add. This is going to be a public static, or yeah, public static. And this will be an integer. We're going to call this patch load count. And I make it static and public because I was using it for some of my debug stuff. Set it to an initial value of 0. So we need to check our patch loaded count. We've got to make sure or see if it is greater than or equal to the number of patches that we have in our visible world at creation time. To get that number, we're going to use mathf, spelling errors. We're going to use the power function. And into that, we're going to pass in our tile side count times 2 plus 1 with a power of 2. So basically, we're taking our tile size count, multiplying that by 2, which gives us both sides plus the 1 in the middle. So with 4 times 2 is 8, plus 1 is 9. Taken to a power of 2 returns 81. If that is true, then we are no longer in the initial load state. So we've now loaded in all of our initial patches. The next part of this is if we're no longer in our initial load state, then we need to go ahead and reset that patch update timer. So we'll take our patch update timer here, and we're going to set it equal to our patch update delay. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to break out of that loop. Because the moment we've gone through and we have updated a patch, I no longer want to do any more looping if we're done with the initial load. On the other hand, if we are in the initial load, I want to keep going through these updates. I want all these terrain patches to be loaded up the very first time as fast as they possibly can be. So we're taking out any of the possibility for dealing with loading up patches, with the exception of we're still forcing only a single patch per update. Well, in that case, we can probably break this out. Now that I think about it, because we never want to do more than one patch per frame. That's a hard limit that I want to keep just for consistency, but I don't want the patch timer to ever happen if we're in initial load.
So do you...
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'm just I know it's just R&D stuff.
Right.
So it's all good. Just looking at it from a performance point of view, but it's all good. Continue.
No, I'm curious. What were you
No,
thinking?
no. Continue.
Oh, you're thinking about making an update list? Yeah, I thought about that too. They're in something more optimal, and we're doing that with the patches to unload. But technically, yeah, you would put in some sort of list going, okay, this is a list of just patches that need to be updated as opposed to iterating through all of our patches. But again, we're only dealing with 81 patches here. It's not a huge number of iterations per cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So
Also, I mean, even something simpler, couldn't you switch those two ifs and throw the second part in else so you're not always calling on mathf power of and doing a little bit of multiplication and addition and all that good stuff in there every single time?
no, because what happens if this condition actually gets flagged? then the patch update timer doesn't get reset until the next frame. Correct?
Hang on, I'm trying. That's what happens when it gets this early in the morning. Logic starts to get fuzzy. Well,
So,
we'll just go with it. It's just
but I see what you're saying. The thing is if we were to move this up before we set it, then you end up in a condition where it's checking if initial load is not true and setting the update timer. But the problem is if this is not checked before this, then this could pass, and then this doesn't get set until the frame or the end of that frame,
okay.
and this doesn't get set until the very next frame
Okay.
pass through. But you also get into the argument with we're still iterating through all of our
That
patches,
exactly.
but to take care of that, we'd need to keep a separate list, and we would have to add and remove into that list
Mm-hmm.
our patches as they're updated.
Mm-hmm. But you have a perfect place to hook that in right now. But that's okay. Let's not change what you've got that you've been playing with, because again, this is just R&D code. We're not yet looking to make everything optimized. So just ignore me.
I try to, but you
I
make it
know.
so
I
hard.
told you I was going to try to stay quiet. I fail.
I did it with the delete, so that's dumb. But with the actual patch part being added, I didn't really want to throw patches in there because the patches that are being updated and stuff like that are being done in my real deal by multiple threads. That gets nasty.
Yeah.
So, but if we run, hopefully we should actually get some patches now. Could have also dumped down the number to about, a fewer number of patches instead of 81.
Just to make it come in, a little quicker.
Yeah, maybe just a little bit. Could have dialed it down to like 1 and only had 9. So it doesn't look like it's firing off. Oh, no, there it is. But it does point out the next problem I wanted to bring up. Look at the patches as they're coming in. You notice it?
What's that?
What's going on as you orbit around? Watch the patches as they appear and disappear.
Oh, yeah.
That is another little problem that I discovered by switching over to this technique. Now, the closest I can figure, this is a bug inside of Unity. And I have no idea what causes it, but I know how to fix it. So it draws the meshes, but for some reason, the camera frustum culling is doing some really bizarre stuff with this thing. So let's go ahead and fix that.
Actually, let's go ahead and put that over into the next video. We can just,
Okay,
this is a good
do that.
spot to call this one right here. So that'll wrap up this video. Thanks a lot.